6:30.
All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, sir. Additions to the agenda, I have two tonight. Governor Hunt House discussion with the Village Center Group, which we will add to old business, and an executive session that we will also add to old business.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to add the Governor Hunt House and an executive session to old business. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, great. We will make the executive session last, that way nobody has to sit through it. How about that?
That's good.
All right. I have no remarks, and we have guests from BCTV. Come on up, guys.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
So all of you got this letter in your packet from BCTV that kind of outlines what they're here for us to listen to and for them to talk about.
Thanks. I'm Jim Verzino. I'm a board member, board treasurer for BCTV, and of course, you all probably know Cor, our executive director and the person that really makes it all happen. And thanks for putting us on the agenda and for the excellent letter you submitted to the FCC on our behalf. Really, the purpose of our visit is to give you some more information about recent law changes and changes in the way people are actually watching TV these days and how they're affecting BCTV's funding, mostly, unfortunately, for the negative. And the, as you may or may not know, we're funded primarily through an FCC Act of 1984 that takes a percentage of cable revenues, and basically some of that percentage goes to public access channels like BCTV all across the country. And that really is how public access television has been funded since 1984, I guess. And BCTV was actually the first public access station in Vermont, so we have a very rich history. And I'm going to let Cor sort of explain the details.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, and I apologize for my appearance. I had an ice skating accident on Sunday and broke my nose, and there you go.
And she's still here.
But Band-Aids are on, and I told Janice, please don't zoom in.
That's commitment.
Anyway, I think you all know that we do have a long history with Vernon, which Vernon was added to BCTV's territory in 1998 under Warner Cable. And you'll remember that your town staff used to actually make this video go live right from that camera by turning it on in the room, and that would go live on our channels, and that went for years. In 2011, we started to provide staff coverage of your select board meetings and your town meeting. And we have had a lot of participation from Vernon residents on BCTV through the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizen Advisory Panel, Handicap Public Service Board hearings, the school board, Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, the Act 46 committees, BUHS School Board, and the Planning Commission hearings about various proposals. So we have seen a lot of Vernon on BCTV, and that is not only through our government access, but also through public access, which means local residents can come to our station, they can learn how to use a camera, they can check it out, create programming, and cover events that they think Vernon residents would like to see. Hyper-local programming, that's kind of called. Those can be about the Vernon Community Visit Day, about the Black Gum Swamp, candidate forums. We had a show, Safe Store Matters, about the plant. So basically BCTV is your local channel. Jim referred to something else about how viewers are changing how they watch. I do want to say that Vernon residents do watch quite a bit online. Every one of your programs gets between 25 and 125 views on your meetings. and on your representative town meeting, 200 views. So if you picture that many more people, right, in your room, that's a lot more citizen engagement that you're getting because of having your videos available on cable and online.
So there's really, so as I mentioned, the way public access has been funded over the last, since 1984, is through this, basically a small percentage of cable television fees. There's two things sort of happening at the same time. Leading up to, so over the last year, I'd say, it's been happening across the country more quickly, but started here recently. There's just been cord cutting. So cord cutting is one thing that's happening. Cord cutting is when people start watching TV using Amazon Prime and Hulu and basically internet services rather than cable. So cord cutting is just stopping using cable. So we've started to see some decline in our revenues due to just due to cord cutting. And then about, 3 months ago, the FCC has proposed a rules change that would basically, without getting into too much detail, allow the cable companies to stop paying for it. And that would literally, if that sort of went through as scheduled as some of the FCC members would like to have it happen, pretty much in one day next summer, all cable access is going to be gone, or public access. So it's, that's a sort of worst case scenario. We don't know how it's all going to play out. Things that we do know, people are cord cutting, so revenues are going down. And depending on a lot of government things that have nothing to do with us in Washington, D.C., we may see a drastic decrease, we may see a small decrease, or we may go away altogether. I don't know. But that's sort of next summer. But even in the short term, cord cutting has really decreased our budget by about 10% this year, just in revenues that we were getting in the past. So we've already seen a 10% decrease. We'll probably continue to see decreases going forward.
So the reason that we're here is to explain that, which we did explain in the letter, but just to make it so that you could ask questions, but also to say that because of this, we've been proud actually to not have been here asking for funding year after year. These have been your local cable subscriber fees have gone to supporting BCTV, and in that way Vernon residents have supported BCTV, and in exchange you have gotten this coverage. But at this point, because of what Jim just outlined, and this FCC rulemaking is likely to go through regardless of how many comments that we submitted, just because of the politics, that we are going to our towns and now asking for support for the service that we provide. And for Vernon, at a rate of 85 cents per person, that comes up to $1,300 for the upcoming fiscal year. Again, as Jim says, we are seeing a gap. Is that what I said
18.
in the 18 in the letter? Okay. All right. I think it might be 13. Let me get back to you on that.
85 cents per individual. Is it household or person?
I calculated by person,
Okay.
but you're right. Let me just check the letter. And 1,800, you're right. Sorry about that. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, and I understand that your policy is that charitable contributions go through a petitioning process. And that then it goes to town meeting and people can vote on it there. I understand that. It is likely that what we are providing is what we're trying to say. It's more like a service, more like a contracted fee-for-service model that we're going to be going to. And so that's a little different than a charitable organization asking for support. And most towns that we've been to are rolling this into an administrative budget under communications. And so obviously your decision, but the reason we're here tonight is just to make sure that your residents and that you know that this service could go away, and that your support is, and it's going to be dependent on your support, whether it does or not. And we have the opportunity for you to ask any questions you have.
Anything?
Nope.
Ladies?
So if we voted this, will this keep you going if the naysayers win for next summer?
We think that we can keep going for another year if this is approved by the towns. At that point, we would know what the decision is at the federal level and how that's gonna shake out on the local level. I didn't want to come here and say, we're just gonna assume this and, take a stab at giving you what is the full cost of the service. So this is still a subsidized cost. And I feel like that's the right thing to do at this point, and the fair thing to do at this point. But realistically, we're not gonna be able to pull together a petition as a charitable organization in this timeframe. But I have to let you and the residents know that that may result in our services not being available.
Also, I think that, there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out, because we could, right now BCTV provides a lot of different services. So residents, anybody within the towns that we work with, residents can go and take classes and learn how to use cameras and make shows and do all these things. So one potential scenario, should the FCC money go away, as Cor said, 200 views just of the Vernon town meetings, right? So that's, as she said, like having extra. So one potential scenario is towns continue to pay for the service of BCTV doing these recordings, but the rest of the services go away. So really, we're practically a skeleton organization whose only role in the world is recording meetings, which is one thing that might happen if the towns want meetings recorded, and I think it's a very valuable service. That's one scenario. So we really don't know. But I think as these funds stay available to record town meetings, at a minimum, we'll be able to continue to deliver town meetings. I mean, we can't ask you to put money into a budget that we then don't deliver on, right? What we're here saying is we provide a service to the community, at least for that piece. And then we're gonna have to figure out how we do the rest, right? And it's a challenging time.
Jean, questions?
No.
So the only thing that I'll say to it is I think you do fall under our policy of needing to petition and go out to town meeting. And the only reason I say that is, Jim and I had a conversation earlier this week, and I understand where you're coming from, that you are a service provider, but so is everybody else that comes to us. So is the Visiting Nurses Association. They provide a service to those folks in town that need their service. So are every other nonprofit that comes to us. They provide some sort of service to a certain number of residents in the town of Vernon. That's my feeling, is that it kind of falls underneath the same policy, our policy to not do anything without a petition.
And when are petitions due?
You know that better than me.
January 17th.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yep.
That's my feeling. You've heard what they have to say. What's your feeling on that policy? Are we going against our policy if approving something like this? Obviously, it's a small dollar figure. It's not huge money, but my concern is breaking a policy that we set forth because of an extenuating circumstance. But what happens when the next person comes in with an extenuating circumstance, and the next person, until we're back to where we were? So.
May I ask a question, Doug?
You can at the end of the meeting during public participation on agenda items.
It's of Core and Jim, and they won't be here. It's just it's an information that might help us, the people who might be signing the petitions. That's why I want to ask. It's just a number. I want an answer to a number. How many? You're asking for $1,800. How much, if we were to just pay you by view, like 24 select board meetings and a town meeting, 25 meetings, how much per event is that?
We would be asking $3,500.
that, okay, but you didn't ask per event?
No, I just mean for the select board meetings and the town meeting.
Okay, so
Our
it
our
is a
total
bargain.
cost actually is $3,500.
Okay, so it is a bargain.
It is subsidized, that's correct.
Thank you.
May I speak?
Apparently, everybody's going to,
Right,
regardless
thank
of
you.
what I want to do.
No, well, this is a town meeting, and I would hope that people be allowed to speak.
And
to
there's a
something
time for public
as-
participation at the end on agenda items only, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I'd like to correct something that you said. This is not a service like the visiting nurses that is being provided to people in town. This is a service that is being provided directly to the town. There's a person standing here filming this, okay? And so this is really a decision to say, does the town want to continue to have this service or not? And if they want to have this service provided directly to the town, do they want to pay for it? This is not the only nonprofit organization that the town would be paying, okay? The town contracts with at least 3 other nonprofit organizations that do not have to petition.
And those are?
And those are, number 1, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, for which we get services directly to the town and we pay them, and they are a nonprofit organization.
And it's a fee.
It's a fee, okay,
Mhm.
but we
It's-
pay a
they're not-
nonprofit.
They're not
one-
asking for a donation, it's a fee.
This is not an ask for a donation either. This is a request for a fee.
Okay.
And by the way, full disclosure, I'm a former board member, but I'm speaking as a citizen of Vernon. Number 2, we pay Rescue Inc., which is a nonprofit organization, the sum of $51,422 for services provided not even directly to the town, but to members of the public in Vernon, just like the Visiting Nurses Association do. And number 3, we pay the Vernon Historians for certain services, which is a nonprofit organization. So I don't think you can resort to the policy here, because this is not a request for a charitable donation. This is a request for a fee, for a service to be provided. If you decide you don't want that service, then you should put it on the agenda again and decide whether you want to continue this service or not. And I think there would be a pretty good debate about that. Thank you.
I disagree that both of those first 2 that you mentioned are fees. They're not a donation to a charitable organization. And the Vernon Historians are exempt from our policy, written in the policy as an exemption to it, as an organization within town. So I understand what you're saying, but I think the policy still stands in this instance. But that's my opinion, and I'm one of 5. Well, 4 tonight.
I mean, it would be a shame to lose it. I know that a lot of our residents do watch it.
You actually have high views for towns.
Yeah. And I'm not debating that it's a service that we should probably keep. I'm debating the policy. Are we breaking our own policy by not asking them to do a petition? Because who was in here a couple weeks ago? BDCC? And made a request, and we said, and they provide services to the town. They could say this is a fee for your services to the town just as easily as BCTV
But
can
would
say
we hold
it's
a
a fee.
contract with them at the end of it? With the BDC, would there be a signed contract that this is what we're getting for?
Oh, I'm sure they can make one up fast enough.
But
if
but
they
I'm
put a fee
questioning
to
if,
it.
if that constitutes a difference.
Yeah.
If we are contracting with them and this is the dollar amount,
Mhm.
is that different from the BDC where they just want some money and then they're willing to help the residents when they are approached?
That would make a difference, I think, if we were contracted, yeah. Because then it would be outside of the realm of the policy, because the policy is a donation, it's not a contracted fee. But as it sits right now, to me, it's a donation. Until I have a contract with a fee in front of me, that says, for this fee, you get this service for 2019, or whatever the case may be, or whatever your fiscal year runs, if that's what you're,
The fiscal year coming up, FY20. is
okay.
July
Are you
1.
calendar or are you July?
We're July.
Okay, so for the fiscal year of, 1920, then I agree.
I mean, would it be easier to do away with the petition side of it and having to go through all that if you did do that? And you outlined, this is what you're getting for your $1,800, this is, and then we have something to fall back on?
Yes, we'd be willing to do that.
Yeah,
And
Probably be cleaner, wouldn't it?
again, this is sort of an interim year while we're waiting to see what happens with our cable revenue funding. The price that we're quoting right now is, again, not the cost of what we're doing, but it's sort of, we're trying to bridge a year when we've got a squeeze on our cable revenues, but we're not quite at the
Yeah.
cliff. So yes, we could do a one-year contract.
that would,
change
that would
everything.
make me feel better that we are not going outside of our policy, because, we get these letters all the time from agencies wanting a donation, and, every one of them could call it a fee, if they wanted to call it a fee, because they provide some sort of service to our residents. But if we have a contract in place with you guys that says, this is what, you're receiving, just like we have to Martin's point with like rescue and everybody else, we have a contract that says these are your, this is the result of the money that you're giving us, then I would be much more, personally, I would feel better that we are staying within our policy. So if you guys are willing to do that, I don't have a problem with that.
We would restrict it to the governmental access, just to the meetings.
That's fine. So, is that okay with everybody? Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I thought that our policy really just was dealing with human services,
I did too.
which I don't really consider that under that category.
It doesn't specify not human services, though. It's nonprofit agencies.
It says nonprofits, not human services.
So,
Yeah. So, but anyways, the contract that would work for me.
yep. I just want to keep us inside the policy, and, that's my whole goal, and that's the reason I was emailing you and trying to work through in my head, because obviously I think it's a valuable service that you guys provide, and I want to keep it, and I know our views are
They're actually really
significant for a
Yeah.
small town as we are.
Yes, they really are. compared to
Because
some
our
other
meetings
towns.
are super exciting. And
Yes, they are.
Well, it's the good-looking people at the table that bring in the views.
thanks, Jim.
He looked right at me.
You're new. You don't count yet. If the views go up over the next year,
All right,
then
that's
we'll
fair.
say it's you.
That's fair.
But for now, it's me. But all right, if everybody's in agreement with that, we can move forward. Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So bring us a contract, and from the sounds of it, you will have it signed shortly thereafter, and have you in our budget. So in our budget meeting, which is directly after this meeting, we should probably put a temporary line item in there, knowing that this contract is coming. Okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks,
you.
guys.
Yeah,
I
I'll reach
appreciate
out
it.
to you this week.
Okay, great.
All right, open public comments, non-agenda items. Seeing none. Department and committee reports, we don't have any. Approval of regular meeting minutes of December 4th.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of December 4th as printed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the meeting minutes from December 4th as printed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Budget meeting minutes of December 5th, please.
I move that we accept the budget meeting minutes of December 5th as written.
Second?
Moved and seconded to accept the budget meeting minutes of December 5th as written. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Bills and warrants.
I move that we approve payment of the following warrant. 12T, accounts payable, $101,347.50. 49S payroll, $8,371.17. And 50S payroll, $8,349.76.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the warrants as read. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed. Tyler Cemetery deed buyback. You guys have a sheet in your packet that you got when you sat down for Rockwood. So what is the total amount of the buyback? Is it 200?
$200.
Okay.
And if you could include that in your motion to approve our treasurer to issue a check that for Tim's request.
So we authorize the buyback for the sum of $200
To the Rockwoods.
to the Rockwoods, Kirk and Brenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the buyback of cemetery deed for Kirk and Brenda Rockwood. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Connecticut River Joint Commission Local Rivers Subcommittee. There's gotta be an acronym in there somewhere. So we are looking to appoint Andy White to that subcommittee. I think he's already on the Connecticut River Joint Commission, but this is a subcommittee of that commission that we would like him to be involved with. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, who won?
Gene, you can have it. I'm in the holiday spirit,
Wow.
You can
and I'll
sit-
second it.
Boy, look at us working together just like people. So moved and seconded to appoint Andy White to the Connecticut River Joint Commission Local River Subcommittee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
You need to sign for that.
How much titles?
Oh, all of it?
Just three of you.
Go ahead, Gene. Just because you get an out, you don't get to sign it.
I'm not held responsible for anything.
That's true. So, appointment of Shannon Connolly to the rec board.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to appoint Shannon Connolly to the recreation board. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Great. Approval of flood hazard area permit, instructions, and application. So as we may recall, we appointed Tim to be the keeper of flood hazard areas. And he accepted. So we have this wonderful little permit that folks need to come fill out to make sure that they are not building in a flood hazard area.
And do we need to re-adopt the regulations?
No,
Okay.
no, I just put them in as reference because that's what these were drawn off of.
Because that was done, was that 2001, 2010? I knew there was one in there.
I move we approve the flood hazard area permit, instructions, and application.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the flood hazard area permit, instructions, and application. All of us in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, siren discussion. So we started talking about our warning sirens at a meeting however long ago. So I reached out to Dave, our emergency management director, and he also reached out to Todd Capon, our fire chief, to have this discussion. The emergency management committee probably 6-8 years ago, well, not that long ago, probably 4 years ago, decided to maintain the sirens, and the select board at the time decided to take on that expense. As of right now, we haven't had any expense for those sirens, but we do have a contract with Southwest Mutual for $2,400 a year, and we budget that $2,400 a year. We've never actually spent that $2,400 a year because they haven't done anything. They haven't come replace batteries, they haven't done anything that their contract says, maybe because it's not needed, I don't know the answer to that. So when we talked at our last budget meeting, we said, why do we keep putting this $2,400 in here for sirens, and do we need them? So long story short is Dave and Todd are in agreement that they're not needed any longer. With Vermont Alert and all the other ways that you can get the hazard, warning coming out to you that the sirens are just not necessary anymore. So that we have 3 sirens in the town of Vernon. We have one that sits on the Vermont Yankee property. We have one that sits at the firehouse, which is a dual-purpose siren. It's a hazard siren and also a fire siren. So we have control of that siren for the fire side. And there's also a siren at the recreation department. So if we decide to stop funding this contract, we have no financial recourse or anything for the contract. The contract just goes away. We don't have to pay them anything. There's no contract fee to cancel the contract. We just say we don't want the service anymore. Also discussed by Dave and Todd that they feel that the sirens should be removed at some point if they're not being used. With the exception of the firehouse, because we have control of it for a fire siren, we kind of thinking about keeping that one up, right, Todd? You can come up here and talk to us if you want. You were part of this whole discussion. Since you're sitting here, I just saw you out of the corner of my eye. So it was thought that keeping that siren at the fire department was probably the best course of action, just because we do have some control over it.
Right, because the controls were at the firehouse years ago before we got the OC, and it all went up there.
Yeah.
We haven't used the actual fire siren for fire calls in, God, maybe 10, 15 plus years. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something that we rely on.
Yeah.
So, depending on where's the upkeep for that one siren going to come from if we keep it?
Yeah. But it was your guys' kind of determination to keep
Right.
that one? Okay, so that leaves us with the removal of the other 2 sirens. So everybody that's listening to this meeting from North Star, please close your ears. The one that sits at Vermont Yankee I'm not gonna worry about. I'm gonna ask them to make it go away. So it doesn't cost the town anything. The one at the recreation department will need to budget. I don't wanna do it in this budget year, but we'll need to budget the removal of that siren. And I talked to Dave about pushing it out to the following budget year, and he thought that was okay based on the condition. Right now, he went and took a picture of it. The thing's not rusted and is gonna fall down. So I think we're looking at 2 budget seasons out before we need to plan for the removal of that particular siren.
What's it actually going to cost to remove them?
I can't imagine it's gonna be a whole heck of a lot. I have to imagine it's gonna be very similar to the removal of the light post that we did at the recreation department, because the height's about the same, the structure's about the same. I wanna say that was maybe $2,000 or $3,000 for the removal, and they removed all the light posts. So I'm guessing maybe $1,000, but that's why I wanna, go down the line a little bit. We gotta go through our bid process and that kind of thing. And I think it's just too tight to get it into this budget, and the next budget year is probably where it should go. So that's that. What are everyone's thoughts on stopping maintaining the sirens and removing them.
Sounds good.
I also would agree with that, but, so who actually owns the sirens that we end up responsible for removing them?
The town does.
The town does own them?
When
Okay.
Vermont Yankee closed, they offered the sirens to all the towns that they were in. And when we said they're ours, or we
Yeah.
want them, they became our property to maintain
Okay.
and our problem, essentially.
Okay.
So, like I said, the one at the VY site, I'm gonna make go away in the decommissioning, hopefully, without any expense to the town. I'm sure it's not gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep the one at the firehouse, so we will have to, have an understanding of what, you guys may even have maintenance records for that one anyway.
I don't think so.
But, if it's never been maintained, you guys don't need a battery for the fire siren side, correct?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
You don't know, okay. So I'm
What's your
guessing,
reasoning for wanting to keep it.
I was just thinking as far as rural disaster, but like we were talking, social media, Vermont Alert,
yeah. Dave seemed to be championing the keeping it when I was talking to him, and I don't know if it's just his state of Vermont emergency management, just have something, if we have it, keep it, and it's not,
I mean,
you know,
I don't
I don't
foresee
know.
us ever going back to using the siren for fire calls.
Yeah,
And then we discussed that, it hasn't gone off and
I just
How
don't
long?
see any point in maintaining something that's just sitting there
yeah.
waiting to rust apart.
So we can talk about budgeting its removal too, because I
I
don't.
mean, either way, to me, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I mean, if it's just, gonna be cost effective,
In long term, it's gonna be cost effective to get rid of it.
right.
But if there's some reason to keep it, and that's why, I look to Dave and you to bring us some intelligence in that, and that was the only one that he said maybe we should keep. But if you don't foresee utilizing it, then,
I mean, I think Vermont Alert's, the biggest alerting for Vernon.
Yeah.
Social media seems like that gets out a lot quicker.
yes,
And if the siren does go off, you're going, what the heck's that noise?
yeah.
So, I mean,
It's been so long since they were tested, probably people would freak out if we tested it.
right. Yeah.
So, but.
I mean, either way, it doesn't really, the siren doesn't affect the running of the fire department per se.
Okay, so, maybe we budget the removal of both, but if everybody's happy with nixing this contract and, looking at the removal two budget seasons from now, then let's do that. And we probably should make a motion to that effect, because we made a motion to keep them and sign the contract originally. So we should probably make a motion to step out of that contract and stop maintaining the sirens.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to discontinue the contract with Southwest Mutual for our sirens. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Great. So that's done. So we'll just have to keep in mind, which I'm sure Dave will remind us as well, for the next budget season of removal costs. We can put that out to bid. Setting the date of the January regular meeting. Our January regular meeting starts, would be January 1st. So if we don't want to have a meeting on a holiday, then we need to change the date.
I'm fine with the date.
You're fine with doing it on the 1st?
I don't care.
I don't care either, so.
You care, really? You care. Okay.
Okay, no, that's fine.
We could have meetings on Thanksgiving, I don't care. So.
I would care about that.
Wow. Yeah, hopefully I won't forget.
So we want to leave it the 1st?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Well,
get
no,
double
the
time?
issue also comes in being able to review the warrants before the meeting.
Oh, right.
Because you got all these holidays going on.
I'm guessing BCTV probably won't be.
Yeah. just, you know, the warrants are available Thursday afternoon, and then
Yep.
you can't, basically, they're not available until
The meeting.
the meeting.
Well, the holiday's the 1st, which is, what's that day? Is it
Wednesday.
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
So what makes it any different?
My office
Well,
is closed on Monday.
Because she's closed, yeah. Oh, you're closed on New Year's Eve, right?
Yes, Tim and I both are.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
So maybe we should go to Wednesday then. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me either. 2nd?
Sure.
Sounds great. January 2nd it is.
Okay.
What did you just do?
The meeting is January 2nd.
January 2nd. Thank you.
Okay. On to old business, South School historian lease.
Getting to be real old.
So, we've been back and forth. Come on up, whoever is here to represent. Heather, come on up. We've been back and forth with this a handful of times. We had a version that was done that got sent to the historians. Historians' lawyer looked at it, kicked it back with a few changes. We have not had another version since then with the changes. We have a marked up version. We have the version that was approved by our lawyer, a marked up version, and that's where we stand. Right? We got so many contracts with
It
this
is,
thing that I don't
we
even
changed
know.
it, historians sent us something, we sent them our attorneys. I don't have an editable copy of anything that historians sent, so we're getting mailed hard copies of
Okay.
everything. So we received a hard copy, I sent them our attorney's suggestions, they sent us another copy, which you, all have in your packets, and our attorney has made additional comments on that copy now.
Okay,
So
so
we're
we
at-
only have one good copy that coming from our lawyer.
Yes, we have one good copy coming from our attorney, I did make copies of that for you today.
Okay, so,
Went back to, that was from September, I believe,
Yep.
this last one.
but it was looked at once. That copy was looked at once by the historian's lawyer. We made changes, and now there's additional changes, right? I seem to been
Yes.
going through like 3 sets of changes.
No,
But-
we're on like number 6 now.
Yeah, but the one copy that we have right now from our lawyer that our lawyer did had the first set of changes that came from the historians in it, and
It did
now
not come
we-
from the historians, it was after speaking to the historian's attorney. I
Yes,
believe that he made some of these changes, but the historians had not been part of that conversation. That was when we first said, why don't you two attorneys get together and figure something out and then go to the
yeah,
historians?
which didn't happen.
Which did not happen, so.
Okay,
So,
so here's,
So we're still in the same spot.
so here's my
Right.
suggestion to the select board. The copy that we have that we're referring to right now, that has been vetted between both attorneys before additional changes got involved, is it. We don't spend any more money, we don't spend any more time, we don't spend any more effort. It's a take it or leave it with the lease that is out there right now, that we have. And if you don't take it, you don't open this summer. We remove the grounds maintenance budget because you don't need new plants and you don't need new mulch if you're not gonna be open. And that's my feeling at this point.
I just wanna say something, I don't know that their attorney agreed with this lease. That I do not know. I know that they discussed it, but I don't know if their attorney okayed it or not. I don't know where the changes came from, if they came from the historians or the historian's attorney. But this is the last one from our attorney that was approved. With changes from the historians, with some requested changes. It was like the third one.
We
after-
started this in what,
back and
June?
forth.
Yes.
However, we don't have copies of that lease.
This, you got copies of these back
Back
in
in
September.
September.
This is the one that you got in September.
Oh, that's the town's one.
Yes, this is the last one that our attorney okayed. That's what this one is.
We don't have an
So
okayed
you
one
don't
from
have
from our attorney outside of that one from September is the newest okayed from the town attorney.
Right, these are the ones that the
But, so-
historians, okay.
What the historians have done, you're just throwing that out now.
We, with the second one the historian sent, I did include in your packets the comments from the attorney, so it does need to be done again.
Yes.
Or it doesn't have to, that's up to you.
Our understanding was that the two attorneys talked and the town attorney told our attorney to draw one up. He didn't want to do it. She asked if he wanted to, and so she wrote it up. And it came to you, I believe, or maybe it went to him. I don't.
It did not, that's where, that was the agreement. It was supposed to get drawn up, go to him so that they could,
The
Do it,
historian's
and keep
attorney
sending
has
back.
never contacted our attorney.
no, after that initial.
With the revised lease.
They have not.
Okay, well, we got back some suggestions and we agreed to, I thought it was the attorney.
From the town attorney, what we sent with suggestions, and there was 2 areas, the whereas, which we asked to leave in, and then
Which had the history.
the history. And we were asking him why, the majority wanted to know why there was a section removed. It would be number 17, or current 17.
And do you guys have this, according to, and our attorney has some significant issues with that, so I brought it back to the select board. So after you revised it and sent it back, it went back to the attorney again. And
Okay.
he has provided the select board with more comments on your new revisions, specifically addressing paragraph 17 and the whereases.
Okay,
So those were the changes that you had made above and beyond his comments. So he had more comments and issues with your newly revised one. So we have 2 that the historians, two versions the historians have presented, and which are different than the last one our attorney has approved. So in your hand, our attorney has approved none of them. Does that make sense? There has been a lot of them back and forth.
Yeah.
I understand
We have a
that.
good one from September.
And the one is from September is the last one that our attorney has vetted and said, this is good. But it doesn't have some of the things that it has a few of the things, early on in the summer that the historians had asked for, but there's been more in the meantime through these last 2 versions.
It's kind of frustrating, if you go to rent something, normally you don't rewrite the lease as a rentor. So if I'm renting from Josh, I should be telling Josh what the lease agrees to.
Basically, the things that we had a problem with and the attorney agreed that they were not necessary was about if we go bankrupt or, I don't know if that's the September one. It was just it was a boilerplate lease agreement, and there was several, I think numbers 7, 8 or whatever, that just were totally, they didn't reflect anything in our relationship that was accurate. So, but basically, that was the only thing that was left out.
You guys have
The-
been at our meetings almost as much as we have since June. It has been dragged out, and I just don't understand. You guys have a building that is being leased to you for $1. All of your money comes from the town with the exception of the fundraisers you do. So I don't understand why this is still going on and we still don't have a signed lease.
in the beginning, people did not understand the language. If you don't understand the language,
But
it
it's
needs to be
normal
educated.
legalities in any legal document. I don't understand half of the stuff that is in my lease that I have for a rental. So to what you're saying, it is what it is. At some point, we either have to sign it or it's just not there.
But they were also told that they could develop what they
And we
worked
have
for
But
four
this has
times.
been for
Because-
6 months now.
It has not been
because
4
they
times.
didn't, half of that stuff is more corporate than what we're dealing with in that original lease.
So September's incorporated their concerns, right, at that point?
That they had given us at that point,
At
yeah.
that point. So then what brought up the new concerns?
I don't know what September, I don't know what that is that you're talking about, so I'm not sure what.
It was the last, remember the last one that you gave us? Or this one is November 16th?
Okay.
It was the one before that, right before that, so this was your response to that last one.
So, okay, so that's the one where he felt that it shouldn't have anything about the history of the relationship over the last 50 years with the town.
His
He
concern,
wanted that out.
as far as I can tell, his concern with the whereases can make a case, the way that they're written, that there has been a binding lease in the past, and there hasn't, so that was his concern with that, not the fact that it's outlaying history.
But there was a binding
That was
agreement.
his. I
Sort of,
just-
because the town had asked the historians to
Right.
do this.
At town meeting.
Yeah, so it was kind of
I
a relationship.
I think it's important to highlight that this lease is just to remove liability from the town. That's the only reason that it has to be done. It's because our insurance company has required that we do that. And our attorney has been tasked with the challenge of making sure that the liability doesn't fall on the taxpayers if something happens over there. That's all this lease is for. As far as arguments about the history and if you want that included in the lease, I don't know how to put that in there, and that might be something that your attorney can talk to the town attorney about.
We're done paying for
Couldn't that be an
attorneys.
addendum?
This is 6 months that this has gone back and forth.
We're done paying for attorneys in this, in my opinion. And if we have the majority of the board that's in agreeance with that, then the September lease is a take it or leave it lease. And that's where I'm at. And I think that's where Chris is at, based on what he's saying.
Can I see the September lease?
Absolutely. I did change the dates to December, but this is that's all I changed in the
This is multiple copies.
I think that I'm relatively new with the historians, so I actually found this helpful because I didn't understand the relationship between the town and the historians. I didn't realize there was a town meeting where they were, the town voted to have this group oversee the history of the town and the building and to operate out of it, and so then the historians created the museum. I didn't know the history. So I think some people are feeling that if, as we all are aging, that this is an important part of the history of what is supposed to be happening with the historians. And that 50 years there's been no lease. There just was an understanding with the town. So now we need this protection so the town isn't liable for anything. But in it, it seemed, or several people, and I agreed, felt that that having some sense of why we're doing this and what our relationship with the town has been was important before we said all the things that we agreed to take care of for the town.
Could that not be a separate document?
That was something that was thrown
Right up
out
a
as an
historical
addendum.
thing, that this is,
Yeah.
that this is the lease, this is the lease.
Yeah.
But this is a separate document explaining it, so that it has nothing to do with the lease, but this is a document that explains the historians.
I think that would be fine, as long as it was attached to it, wouldn't you think?
I don't want it attached to the
I
lease.
would have it stand alone, because maybe down the road, you wanna break this lease, or something happens. You want the history permanent. I think the history should be written up at how it came, as a permanent thing, put it in the town records, put it in the town report, but don't attach it to the lease, because you're muddying up the history by attaching it to a lease. It's like, the history is more important than the lease to me. The lease we need, so I wouldn't.
And the
personally-
history has nothing to do with the lease.
Right, the lease is like,
There's
two
no,
different things.
there's no tie to a lease and an explanation of history. There's,
Well, this is changing the relationship we've had with the town. Now you're saying
Right, but it
that
still has nothing to do with the actual
you're
lease
liable for
itself.
everything that happens there. That never was even talked about. I mean, that was, if a slate fell off on a biker's head while he's sitting on the steps,
he just went along with his business.
yeah, and if these days, if he was gonna sue, he would, you know, I mean, that was,
and that's why you have liability insurance
Yeah.
now as well.
yeah,
To
so
take
it's,
care of
we're in
that.
different times, but,
Right.
Yeah, see, I
But
don't
this is a different
understand, like, in
relationship.
that kind of situation, why it's not whoever owns the building, the landlord's responsibility if the condition of the building lent itself to.
It would, it
That
probably, it would be, in that particular instance, it would
I don't read
be.
it that way here. It just seems to be that everything goes on to the tenant.
And the
supposedly
tenant's
it's-
wholly funded by the town, so that doesn't matter either.
If it's a defect in the building and the property, that would fall on the town. But if there is, if the historians have somebody cleaning and they're up on a ladder and they fall, right now, well, now that they have liability insurance, it's a little easier, but without the lease, that could fall back on the town.
and we have no
Yeah.
problem with that. I mean,
Right.
that's,
Right.
we've agreed to that, but there are cases where if a biker was there, a truck flipped over in the yard and hits someone, or, you know, that's totally not our, anything to do with us, and ordinarily that would be the property owner's responsibility, and that is what the last sentence in 17 said. I mean, that's the reality of what would happen. They wouldn't come after the historians if someone was going to sue in that case, but, you know, I don't know that they wouldn't go around the lease anyway, so, you know, I don't know. if-
Anybody can go around a lease.
Yeah,
It's,
so-
this is to satisfy our insurance company. You guys, you received all the emails that you asked for, because you didn't believe us, that it came from our insurance company. And so you received those emails. So you could see that we weren't just making things up. And we've gone, like I said, we've gone back and forth so many times at this point. It's hard to even keep straight what versions came from you, what versions came from our lawyer, and that's why I'm just,
Well, and I just wanna say, we haven't been trying to be difficult. You know, we were told this was not mandatory, that this was voluntary or whatever in the beginning, and so
It's
there's
not
been.
mandatory. So you guys don't have to use the building.
That's exactly right. The lease is not mandatory. You don't have to sign the lease. You will not have access to the building
Well-
if you don't sign the lease.
And then it's
So-
mandatory.
Yeah,
To have the building, it's
They
mandatory.
can move everything to the chapel,
What-
but, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
clearly it isn't important to you, but it is to many people, especially
No,
older
and
people.
that's not the
I don't
case
think that's
either.
fair to
That's,
say at all.
that's absolutely not fair to
because
say at all.
I think that it is important. The history of Vernon is important, but we are going on 6 months now, and when we're raising concerns about what if we go bankrupt, it's the taxpayers that are funding it. So how could you go bankrupt?
Exactly. So why put something in an agreement that is totally irrelevant to our situation?
I
It
can
just-
answer that question. The reason the bankruptcy clause was in there, so that, because this lease is going for multiple years, in the worst case scenario, if you went bankrupt because you have a 5-year lease, whoever sued you, if you ran out of money on your liability insurance, now owns the rest of your lease. So we would have no control over who moved in there. That's why the bankruptcy thing was in there. They could take over the rest of your lease. After they've cleaned you out and you're out of money, but you still have a 5-year lease, that you got 4 years left, you could have, they now could have a case to get the rest of your lease. Does that make sense?
I think
That's why that
we
was in
agree
there.
with the September, I mean, I don't see it, but if it was before this.
Did you get a copy of
Yeah,
that?
No.
We just-
Well, I-
This is the very first one, this is the boilerplate one.
Here's
this
the
isn't the-
September one, which has a December date on it today, so this is the last.
There were some questions, and then there was,
Just pass
then
it
we
to
went
They
and we
have-
went to the attorney.
Because there was one in May.
I would ask the board to,
No, it's not the first. But that's why, do you have any other
use-
questions about other clauses? Because I tried to bring all of your questions to the attorney,
Fine.
as you brought them up.
Other ones, yeah.
what about the lease that we have drawn up? Your attorney has, the town attorney has gave the recommendations. And we were accepting, had liked to have the whereas stay in. And that last clause stay in. Those were the two differences.
Well, do you mind if I disclose this? It is confidential, this email.
Yeah, well, the beginning and ends of it is our attorney doesn't agree to the changes. They don't, our attorney does not agree to those changes that you want.
Your last ones.
Yes.
The last ones.
The
Yes,
very
we
last
are
set,
talking
which
about
is
the
the ones
last
that you're talking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whereas and the change in 17, our attorney does not agree to that.
Okay. If we bring this back to our board, back to our group, our trustee board, with that he doesn't agree with the changes that, and those two items needed to be as he suggested, could we use this lease? Rather than,
I haven't gone through this word for word, so I would have to compare that to what the attorney sent. Just so you know, I have not gone to compare what else has changed.
So it sounds like she's saying that he agreed to everything except for this history, and if we could do an addendum, I think, and leave that off,
He doesn't agree with the revisions to paragraph 17?
Oh, that's the last clause, that the town would be liable if something happened when we weren't involved and it was as a property owner.
because everything else that he
We changed everything else.
suggested, comments and revisions were done. And the one dated 11/29, except for the whereas.
Can we get the last one that the town attorney approved? And
You have it in your.
that's the one, okay. I'm
That
just
says
trying to
December,
make
that's
sense
the
about
last
it.
one,
All
which
right.
was approved by our town attorney in
So
September.
that should be the end of it.
That was in September, and then after the first one the historian sent in response to that, our attorney just gave an email.
Right.
Which I forwarded to them,
And
And we made the changes.
and they made those changes plus additional ones that they didn't agree with in his email. So that's the version that we have now. They didn't just make his changes.
Right.
They made other ones too, and that's what he's now disagreeing with, is that paragraph and the whereases.
Those are the two things that didn't change, that we were asking to,
From his email with the whereas, he had listed very succinctly the changes.
And we did the changes.
And then did you make additional changes?
No.
Like I said, so you followed this email exactly?
yeah,
Right.
And you did nothing else,
No.
except we wanted
except,
the whereas in that last
so
paragraph,
except for those things.
those two.
It's those except.
And every time a lease has gone back to you guys, it's come back with more questions and more things that you
changes.
want changed, and
It's those excepts that our attorney is not agreeing with, that's all I'm saying.
Those are the two accepts. So if we took those two out, he would be in agreement with.
which would be the lease that you have right there, that one.
No, it may not be, because this,
Okay.
No.
they changed theirs.
Oh, all right.
Did you give them a copy of the
They-
one that we
They have, yes, they have
just did with
copies.
all the changes that the attorney wanted?
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ian, is that the one that just went around?
Yep.
I think your history should be a standalone document. I think,
I'm fine with that, I mean, we can go back, I think
Yeah.
if that's important to you, then.
I think it
that's-
has more power if it's standalone. Personally, which is my opinion. But this has been a long process and it's,
All right, I make a motion that the select board accept the September lease agreement for the historians and make no further changes.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the September lease and make no further changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I'm on the fence.
Well, you gotta vote.
I'm gonna go aye, because I'm tired of this.
Okay. Those opposed?
Nay.
It's passed.
Could we have a copy of the September?
Yeah.
Just-
Did he use this year? We can, right? If you would like to sign it, I could send them back with the original signed copy,
That's fine.
and if it comes back, sign it. We did this, okay, this is what we did in June. Just I guess we're not less big of a time crunch.
This is the one you need me to sign?
Yes.
Cindy, you wanna be my witness?
Sure.
Alright, you sign another one. So two.
So give this to them, this one?
Oh, we're still on that.
Hmm?
Said we're still on that.
Okay. Governor Hunt House discussion. Come on up, Martin.
Okay. I'm sorry for my impertinent interruption earlier, but I think we reached the right conclusion.
That's okay.
So the Governor Hunt House, the question came to the select board, I believe, maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago, as to whether, from Entergy, as to whether the town would be interested in taking ownership of the Governor Hunt House. And the discussion then was that the town itself would not be, probably, but that maybe a nonprofit organization like the Friends of Vernon Center could be the ones to take it over. So the Friends, at that meeting, we volunteered to form a group to study the feasibility of doing that, because it's not so easy to just say yes or no to that without really looking into it. And that grouping includes various members of the Friends and Patty O'Donnell, who's been helping us with that. And so there's been several tours of the building with
I
that
think I'm
group.
on that committee too, right?
You're on that committee, yes, but I guess we haven't gotten you in the loop.
No, you haven't, but I've been in contact with Joe Lynch, so hopefully you
Okay,
got
good.
more information than I got.
Well, we've had several tours of the, and it's an ad hoc group, it's not a formal committee. You know, we've gotten familiar with the building in a couple different tours. One of those tours included folks from ACCD, Caitlin Corkins, who is the grants coordinator at ACCD, Jenna Lepachinsky, who is from the Preservation Trust of Vermont, which also has grant-making types of resources, and Sarah Coffey, our new state rep, was on one of those tours. And so from that, the process has gone to say, you know, we need to do a number of things. We really need to get an idea of what the sort of first day costs would be if we took that over. It pretty clearly needs a new roof. It needs a paint job. It probably needs a few other repairs. There's a little sill work near the front door that needs to be done. There's some trees that have to come down. The HVAC system that services the back of the building, may or may not be a first day expense, but it's original to that part of the building and may need to be replaced at some point. In the front part, the historical part of the building has only resistance electric heat, being Vermont Yankee and too cheap to meter. And so it probably prudently should have a different kind of heating system also at some point. So those are the kinds of things that we have, sort of eyeballed there. We are speaking with Isaac Wagner, who's a sort of construction development person over in Guilford. He had a lot to do with the Guilford General Store over there to do a sort of a basic survey, structural and maintenance type survey to say, okay, this is, if you took it over, this is the sort of upfront capital cost that you should expect. We're thinking that is not huge. Over in Guilford, they're doing a community center. They're budgeting $1.5 million first day costs. We're thinking this is maybe $200,000 or $300,000, something in the low 100,000s ballpark. So that's number one. Number two is we are sometime in January, towards the end of January, we'd like to have a sort of a community visit to the Governor Hunt House. Lots of people haven't seen that building since it's been closed essentially since 9/11, and even before that it wasn't open all that much, as I understand. And so we're going to have something like a apple pie social there to invite people in and look around, come up with ideas for, if this were to become a community center of some kind, what kinds of activities would happen there. We've had lots of ideas come to us about, you could do this, you could do that, you could do anything from theater to music to gatherings of all kinds, to educational events, to tours of the building, to leasing it out for parties or conferences or whatever. And so that would be a key to figuring out, okay, if we did it, what kinds of activities there would generate income, how much revenue could it generate, and what would the sort of annualized expenses be for operating it. And that's something that Isaac would also help us with. And does that break even, or does that require some annual fundraising, or what? So we kind of need to get the financial picture. We're also looking at, then once we have that and we know what the dollars and cents are, then what kind of fundraising can we do? What is the potential that we could raise from government grants, foundation grants, local fundraising events, businesses, especially sort of in-kind donations. Maybe somebody would help out with taking some trees down or doing the roof or painting or whatever. So there's lots of pieces to be figured out. I think the timeline on this would be that maybe 2 to 3 months to sort of come up with a go or no-go decision on this, at which point I think we'd be back here. But I think in the meantime, it'd be good to keep Entergy in the loop if you're talking to Joe, that, hey, this is happening. We're not just sort of thinking about it. We're actually doing a feasibility study.
I'll tell you what I know. And I think they're on month 3 of being on the grid, so they'll actually have some little bit of history of what it costs.
We'll have that, yeah.
So like I said, I think they're on the 3rd month of that happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of pretty much the only thing that he's given me thus far, is that they're working on getting some maintenance history for us still, and that they could share with us, the last 3 months or, 6 months or whatever,
Yeah. Any of that would be
Of talking
very,
that was on the
very
grid.
helpful. We're also
Yeah.
talking to Chad Mulverhill, who
Yep.
has been involved in sort of the maintenance aspects of that building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm happy to continue to help as a quasi-member of the board and stay in touch with Joe at Entergy and get the information that you need as quickly as he can get it to us. Obviously, they have way bigger fish to fry at the moment, but he
Yeah.
has been working on it for us and talking with his guys on the inside. There is an adjacent property that's just right across from the school, just a grass area.
Yeah, and we'd like that to be, certainly to be included, because for
That is available.
tent events and so forth, that would be very.
So that
useful.
particular lot is available and would probably be part of this agreement if somebody decides to move forward.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be great for other events or even for parking,
yeah, Yeah,
because
right now the
parking is
school-
kinda limited.
right now the
is-
school utilizes it for overflow parking for events and stuff like that. We all park across the street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so that particular portion is available as well.
So, and then, so on a related topic also, the village center plan, we've received the draft
Yep.
that the planning commission has and the Friends. We discussed it in our last meeting. We've sort of held it over to the January meeting to put our full thoughts together in response, and then they will take that and do the final plan. And of course, the Governor Hunt House is part of that plan. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, it's really a pretty good report, but there's certainly maybe some tweaks, and so if you can have a look and get any feedback to us, that'd be great. It's on the website.
Yep. I printed it off,
Yeah.
all 100 pages of it
Used up
between
all
the
ink in your cartridge.
appendix and, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so hopefully by somewhere in February, we'll have that as well. So, I think that's
Great.
all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. The
Yeah.
repairs, do they have to be towards the historical building part of it? So your roof, do you have to have a slate roof, or will you be putting in a different type of roof?
No, there's just an asphalt roof on there right now.
Okay,
Just because something that has a historic designation from the national or state,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't alter it or do something
Okay.
with it, especially inside. But you could tear it down if you want, something with a historic designation. The only, where the restriction comes in on something like that is that if you were to get a state or federal grant
mhm,
for repairs to a historic structure, then it probably comes along with stipulations that you have to follow certain historic guidelines.
Yep.
okay.
But even then, I don't think it means you need to put a slate roof back on something that's had an asphalt roof for the last 50 years.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So, we're going into executive session.
So, personnel?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, move that we go into executive session. Appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, 1 VSA 3133A3 with the board and with Michelle.
Second. I won that one.
Chris isn't giving that one up.
He's not answering that.
So, moved and seconded to go into executive session and evaluation of personnel. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are in executive session. Executive session at 7:49 PM, out at 8:15 PM. No action was taken. Public participation agenda items only. Seeing none. Correspondence, and town admin report, please.
Okay, you have the correspondence. If hopefully everybody got a chance to read through the draft audit that I sent. I didn't print one out for everybody because it's huge. It is just a draft right now. If you have any questions or concerns, if you can get them to me, I'll get them to our auditors before the final report is completed. Yes? Okay. And wanted to let you know, last week, the Wyndham Regional Commission had their public hearing on the town plan that we asked them to approve or accept. And it went pretty well. They had some comments that were pretty small about specific issues. Jean was there too. But overall it looks good. Fingers crossed that they will go ahead and approve that next month, early next month. And that's all I have.
Okay. Upcoming meetings, number one is not correct. We are not having a meeting tomorrow because we're crammed in our budget session right after this one. And then the next regular meeting will be January 2nd per our decision today. We are adjourned from our regular meeting.